The last assignment had you sharing your name and base school, keeping things simple to ease you into the production process. Stepping things up a bit, this assignment will see you choosing a subject with a bit more substance, something that's meaningful to you, and presenting it in the form of a video show and tell. Here's an example of what a show and tell video could look like.
Hi, this is Mr. Wetzel, and this is my show and tell video. So ever since I was little, I've been artistically inclined. I've got drawers full of old sketchbooks and tracing paper. I've got a box somewhere full of little sculptures that I made out of air-dry modeling clay. But when I got into high school, I started learning Photoshop and video production, and as a result, a lot of my projects since then have been more digital in nature, sort of like what you're watching right now. There are times, though, where I do find myself craving a more tangible project to work on, a little art piece or something that I can actually really hold and that actually takes up some space. And thankfully, one of my dad's pastimes is woodworking. So I grew up always having access to power tools and materials and somebody who knew how to do stuff with those things. Eventually, I started learning how to do a lot of it myself, and I want to show you one of those projects that I've worked on. Isn't it nice? This is a replica shield I started making a while back. It is based on a design from The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I made this. So the idea for this project came to me when I was sorting through a bit of scrap wood, and I happened upon a few wooden discs left over from some marching band props that my dad had once helped build. Perfect shield size, I thought. So next, I scrolled through a list of shields from Breath of the Wild to pick out the ones that would fit this round shape. I chose this twin serpent design firstly because it looks cool, and its colors were simpler than some of the others. Next, I found a good image and used Photoshop to lay a grid over it for reference. Then I traced the grid onto one of the discs and used it to guide me as I copied out the pattern from the image square by square. Then I took a little rotary tool and etched along what I had drawn. The original design is just a flat image. It doesn't have this sort of dimensionality to it, but I liked the little bit of depth that the etching added. Plus, I had the tools, so why not? After that came a base layer of brown paint, a few layers of beige for the body segments, and then some black to outline everything and have it pop a little bit more. Then to add to this sort of older, weathered kind of look, I thinned out some of the brown paint and kind of lightly brushed it over certain places to make it look like it was properly aged. If you can't tell, I'm very proud of how this turned out. I might go back at some point in the future and maybe cut some foam to kind of replicate the metal banding that would go around the edge of the shield. I do not plan on putting a handle or straps or anything on it like that. I never intended this to be wearable necessarily. I might put some hooks on the back though in the future if I ever decide I really want to hang it up as a proper art piece. But that does it for my show and tell video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little arts and crafts story, and I hope whatever subject you choose, you have as much fun making your video as I've had making mine. See you next time.
Getting into the specifics, your show and tell video should meet the following criteria. It should be 2 to 4 minutes long. Now, that is assuming you are actually presenting during most of that runtime. You can't just say, "This is my favorite beach," and insert a long clip of waves to fill the time. It's 2 to 4 minutes of actual presentation. Your video should include a selfie-style shot, much like your digital name tag. I think using it to introduce your chosen subject is the most logical place to use it, but it's up to you where in your presentation it'll go. And don't forget what the previous guides said about lighting, composition, and camera settings, and refer back to them if you need to. Your video should include 3 or more pieces of additional visual media. These can be photos or videos, as long as they're relevant and support your presentation. Additionally, at least one of those items should be animated using keyframes, focusing on scale, position, and/or rotation rather than opacity. If those terms don't make sense, don't worry, we'll get into it. Your video should include at least one music track. The track should be audible, but not so loud that it distracts from the spoken portion of your presentation. Like last time, your video should feature audio and video of reasonable quality. It should be a 1920 by 1080 video, and it should be submitted with a screenshot of your completed project's timeline, and those files should also be properly named. Following the convention established last time, your video would be named something like last name, first initial _ show and tell, and the timeline screenshot would be last name, first initial, timeline, show and tell. When it comes to considering your subject for this video, know that the next assignment is meant to highlight an aspect of your GovSchool experience specifically, so you might put a pin in any ideas like that and save them for next time. For the purposes of this assignment, you can choose just about anything. Highlight a pet, talk about a family vacation, share a fun story from an extracurricular, your choice. Now, if you compare the sample video for this assignment with the one for the digital name tag, you'll notice that the media needs were obviously a lot greater than last time. To produce my sample video, I used footage of my actual presentation, my self-introduction type shot. I used a piece of official video game art and 6 photos featuring components of my arts and crafts project. I used 2 pieces of handheld video. I used a video clip captured on a game console. And I used a music track from a website called Incompetech, which I'll say more about in a minute. All told, this sample video took me 2.5 to 3 hours to produce. But unlike last time, this sample video intentionally exceeds the criteria in order to share more ideas of what can be done in your video. This sample video is not the bar you're expected to meet, it's just meant to give you ideas. Now, if you don't have access to good photos or videos of your subject, you might consider finding some royalty-free media to use. Royalty-free means that the media can be freely used by anyone without the need to pay royalties or license fees to its creator or its owner. It's an important distinction to know if you ever look into making videos professionally. Personally, I like to use sites like Pexels and Unsplash when looking for images or videos, since they don't require subscriptions to access their libraries. At least they don't currently. If you choose to download media from either of these sites, be sure to check the size of the image and try to save a version that's closer to 1920 by 1080. Everything's ultimately going to get rendered out at that resolution anyway, so don't worry about using the largest, crispest image possible. For royalty-free music, I'd recommend Kevin MacLeod's website Incompetech. It's got hundreds of tracks across different genres, instruments, and tones, and the site's got a lot of options that allow you to narrow down your search to find a fitting track. Lastly, before we jump back into Premiere, I want to highlight the value of planning your videos before you start shooting. Even some simple bullet points to organize your thoughts and save you time you might otherwise spend doing a lot of additional takes. By doing so, you might even find a way to structure your video to make it easier to produce. For instance, I knew that trying to record my presentation all in one go would likely take more time than it would if I recorded it in segments. And since I was already planning to cut away to photos or videos of my prop, I decided I would use that to cover the cut from one segment to another. That meant that I only had to do one take of the middle section because I didn't have to worry about looking at the camera, and I could just read from my notes. You don't need to know every single little piece of media you'll be using before you start recording, but it's a good idea to at least consider what you might need and how you'll go about getting some of that media. Are you going to have to dig through some old photo albums? Are you going to have to scroll back through some old social media posts? A little planning can go a long way.